continue our discussion on the TDC. We're out in our Type 2D U-boat, and we're in our patrol zone in the North Sea. I've been on the dive schedule for a little while, and just basically moving around in the zone. And on my dive schedule, basically, I'm moving from quadrant to quadrant, and I try to stay in the center. And you can see as I dip down in any one of these areas, the hydrophone covers the whole quadrant. So on a 3-hour interval, I can, the sub can move from one quadrant to the next and dip down, and basically I blanket the area in hydrophone, and usually that's the way I find my targets. And here we are. We were up in this direction, came down here, and we've found ourselves a hydrophone contact bearing that looks like 59. So I'm not sure which way it's going. I know it's somewhere bearing 59, so out this way. So it's probably somewhere here off the coast of England. But what I thought we would do today is, in my last couple TDC tutorials, I was showing you how the interface works in conjunction with the attack scope UI that they've incorporated into this game. And there are definitely times when we might want to just completely bypass that UI, because there are elements of it that make it a little bit aggravating. You've got a perfectly good firing solution, and if you don't put in a name of a ship, for instance, it won't let you fire a torpedo, which seems a little silly to me. But those sorts of things, sometimes we just want to bypass and go directly to the TDC. So I thought maybe what we would do is we'd show an example of what in the U-boat commander handbook they refer to as the attack proper. And what they lay out in that handbook is this idea of wanting to set yourself up for a 0 gyro angle shot and getting as close to the target as possible, and take as many of the variables out of the equation as possible. And a 0 gyro angle shot is basically going to make distance irrelevant. And a lot of folks describe, and a very easy one and common one is one that they call fast 90, which is not only are you setting up a 0 gyro angle shot, but you're also perpendicular to the target. It becomes easy because it also kind of takes another unknown out of the equation, or something that could have some error in it, which is angle on bow. And if you're coming in perpendicular to the target, then you're always either 90 degrees port or 90 degrees starboard. So it's pretty simple. What we can do in our sub, and I'm in pause time, so I'm going to take us out. Rather than get within an observable distance, we can, if we want to, go in and preset the TDC for an attack. Now, I've showed you that there's these shortcut tools, and once again, I'm probably going to take advantage of them just to get a read on true course, so I can show you how to play with the TDC. But we're going to do that by clicking on the propellers detected, the hydrophone contact. That's going to open up this detail here, and it's going to show me some information. So it shows me the ship's moving at medium speed. It's showing me that it's one ship. It's 50 to 80 kilometers away, and then it's giving a relative, a true bearing as opposed to relative. So if I just drew drew this on the screen, it would say it's in this direction down in the 234, and if you transfer that to our sub, that's the 234. But anyway, let's go ahead and use the intercept tool. I'm moving at half a head, so I'm doing 5 knots. I'm submerged. Let's see what the intercept says. Well, it's a couple things that are a little surprising. It's a little closer than I expected, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised because it's within our hydrophone range, and it's also not exactly unusual that our hydrophone contact it picked it up at about the halfway point of our range. So, but what you can tell from this bearing, intercept bearing, because it doesn't say intercept is not possible, it means the intercept is possible. So that means that's the future position. And we'll go ahead and mark that as 1 point, and we'll call it M2. And then which direction is it coming from? You know, what's the M1, the actual location? If I just stop my sub, the intercept is going to shift. Should shift. Let's see. Maybe I lost the connection there. Oh, that's interesting. So it's showing me the same. I'm just going to do this. Okay, well, I misread that. For some reason, it's saying that it's not giving me the intercept is not possible, which is unusual because I'm going 0 speed, but it's saying that's the location of the ship. So interesting. I haven't seen that before. So that's actually really an M1 location, but we'll leave it as M2, and I'm going to increase my speed and see if it changes. So that's actually the M2 up there, but we'll just call it M3. So now we have the direction of the ship, its true course, and that's, you know, our crew does a spectacular job, and the fact that they can pinpoint it that, you know, that accurately makes me happy, because it takes a lot of the workload off of me. And once you have true course in this game, you basically have all the advantage. And what we're going to do is move to intercept the target. And I think what I want to do is set up for that 90-degree perpendicular. And right now, if I stay submerged and move at 6 knots, I can catch the target there. Let me just try again if I stop.
Engine stop.
Okay, so that's where it is right now. So it's got to be moving pretty slow. I mean, for me to be able to catch it doing 5 knots. But to figure out, you know, what a valid intercept course might be, you know, I think for this one, just a dead reckoning plot might not hurt. So maybe we'll start off in this direction.
Flank ahead.
And we'll see how we do. I'm going to surface the boat so that we can approach it at a faster rate here.
Current depth 15 meters. Switch to diesel engines.
I'm a little skeptical of what I'm seeing, because I'm not sure how in the world I could, if that is the current actual position of the ship, and I can intercept it doing 5 knots there, that ship's got to be going really, really slow. So something just doesn't seem right. And you know, our crew's not perfect, so I'm a little skeptical. But let's see what we find. So let's dip down here and see what it looks like.
Dive to 30 meters.
Five meters.
Switch to electric motors.
30 meters.
And we'll get our
Man the listening room.
sonar active, or hydrophone, sorry.
I need some help here.
And we picked it up even though we're going flank, so we must have a pretty good read. And
Change course.
yeah, it's it got a lot further than I would have thought. So it's not going that slow, because right now at a, well,
35 meters.
I mean, I guess that's right. I'm doing 7 knots now. I can intercept it there. Before, at flank, I guess I couldn't intercept it until up here. I'm gonna run in this direction at flank a little bit, because I actually like that approach. As you guys know, I like those that port quarter approach, but I did want to try to get on a more of a 90-degree perpendicular. And one thing we can do, even right now, is we could go in and set up the TDC in advance of what our attack plan is. And if the attack plan is, I'm going to come in at a perpendicular like this, And I'm going to set up for a 90-degree angle on bow. I know that the target's moving
35
in
meters.
this direction. I can go in right now and set the TDC up for that, so why not? I'll go in and we'll move Carl Herman, or I don't know, maybe we'll have our captain. We'll set him on the TDC. And we'll go take a look. And what's our TDC showing? Well, it's showing that my scope is looking at a target bearing over to the right. We want to get that facing 0. Now, I could, that's got the angle on bow going right to left. That's going to need to be going left to right, and then it's got a speed of 9 knots. I think the speed is going to probably be more around 7. So I can dial that in maybe around 6 or 7. It might actually be 6 for the ground we've made up, but I kind of use 7 as a standard for these single contacts early game. We got 1,000 meters to target. That's fine. We can kind of leave it there. In fact, as I said before, for this sort of a fast 90 perpendicular attack with the intent of having a 0 gyro angle, the distance doesn't even matter. So leaving it at 1,000, that's perfectly good. I don't even care if I get up to 300 meters. I can still leave it at 1,000. That'll work. So we're going to take distance out of the equation. So all we got left is angle on bow and ship speed. I can't start setting angle on bow right now until I get my scope bearing at 0. Now, I could click this lever, and it would allow me to move the TDC, this red box bearing, and put it on 360 or 0 or as close to it as possible. Yeah, this is extremely aggravating, the tenths of a degree. I wish they would get rid of it so that these dials were easier to use. But I could do that and get pretty close, and I know my angle on bow, because I'm going to be approaching the ship from the starboard side, I know that in my periscope view, it's going to have an angle of bow of 90, and it's going to be the ship going from left to right. So it's going to be looking in this direction. Now, what happens if I throw this lever? Well, if I throw this lever, it's going to lock me back to the attack scope, and the attack scope is pointing over here. And what's going to happen is the TDC is going to start spinning, and you're going to hear it spinning up, and it's going to come right back around here, and it's going to be adjusting angle on bow and all these things, and it's just going to be wrong. Actually, it won't adjust angle on bow because this is the earlier model C37, but it's going to be adjusting for parallax, and it will cause this to move a little bit. So what I want to do is, first I want to go to our attack scope and get it zeroed. So I'm going to go back to my crew, and we'll take Herman. So I'm going to press the tab key, and Herman, you're going to go
And the attack periscope.
at 30 meters. I want you to go look at fish and get on the attack scope and at least turn it to 0. So we'll wait for him to walk over and speed it up a little bit. And we'll take a look at the attack scope, and there it is. It's looking in the wrong direction. It's also fully extended. We might as well crank that down. I don't want to be breaching the surface and having that popping up. But what I'm going to do now is, as I scroll left and right, it's scrolling slow, so it's probably at a higher magnification. Let's put it on 0.6, and it's still scrolling kind of slow. So I got the scope wire on 0 now. And when I go back to my TDC, now notice the scope bearing is in a line with what the TDC bearing is. So now if I link the two, those are locked, and I come back here, and if I scroll to the right, you can hear the TDC moving, but yeah, so it's tracking now, but it's also, notice how the angle on bow changed a little bit. This is a kind of a confusing part because this TDC does not actually update for angle on bow. If I were actually looking, for instance, at 30, the angle on bow, if this were tracking, would be about 60, not 87.7. So what is that 87.7? Well, it's being skewed because this computer is introducing parallax, and I talked to you about the parallax adjustment in one of my other videos, which is the difference between what I'm observing in the scope and where the torpedo makes its gyro turn. So don't confuse if we're using this early model TDC, don't confuse this movement as being some sort of a bug or something. It's not designed. This earlier model one was not designed to track AOB, so it's working right. It's just a parallax adjustment. But I'm going to go ahead now and let's just assume for a moment I was back in my, back here, and I went through the trouble of putting that on close to 0. Remember what I told you would happen if and now this is, see, now it's been readjusted for parallax because now it's got a 0 bearing. And if I click that, you see what it's doing? It's bringing it over to here, and it's changing my angle on bow. So the moral of the story here is you can leave, what I do, because I don't like wrestling with all these dials, is I leave that on. And what I first do is I just go to my periscope before I start this, and I zero it out. And as I zero it out, that translates to here, and I get a nice target bearing of 360, which is great, or 0 degrees. And then I adjust my angle on bow and my speed, and it's just giving me one less thing. So I don't have to worry about this, the distance. This I zero out the scope, and it transfers. And all I'm really left to do is make sure this is on 90. And this is a setup now for a fast 90 attack. All I have to do is put myself in position and fire the torpedo. Now, because this TDC doesn't update, it means I'm going to have to take the shot. When I shoot at that target, it's going to have to be somewhere in like the 350 to 10 range, and that'll give me that 90 that I've got in there should be sufficient to easily cover that. But anyway, that's the general idea. So now my attack scope and my TDC is set up. I've done it. I'm way out here. The target, our plan is to get in a position to fire over here, and I don't need to mess with the TDC again. We've set it up to fire it for a future 90-degree perpendicular shot with a near zero gyro angle. So let's go ahead and speed things up and see if I can maneuver us into position as expeditiously as possible here. 263. So 263, if I was at 270, it's still a little bit ahead of me. Let's go a little longer. And I'm also a good bit of distance away. I'm 10 kilometers off of the target, so maybe start bringing that in a little bit. Now let's see where we are now. So 280. So if it's 280, it's probably right about here. 270 would be, oh, I'm sorry, this is the direction I'm going. 270 would be here, so 280 probably about there. So we're getting a pretty good spot. Why don't we set up, I'm not using quite as much my intercepts here, but I think I could go there and maybe camp out and be in a position to come in at a 90 degree. So let's give that a shot. In the meantime, we can watch. We're at 285, 284. The fact that it's counting down toward 270 tells me that I'm going to get into position before it outruns me. So it's moving back relative to my position. So I think I'm in a pretty good spot. That ship should probably be about right here. Yeah, bearing 277. So I'm going to hold down shift and make the turn in right here.
Merchant ship, 280 degrees. Alarm, take your positions. We're a well-oiled machine.
And
Show the enemy
distance
what
doesn't matter, but we're kind of following BDU, U-boat commander handbook rules here. So I want to be inside of probably 1,000 meters before I make this shot. And now I think we can go to periscope depth.
15 meters.
Captain,
We're periscope depth. Ready for surface.
And I've kind of made a fair guess at what I think the target speed is. So I think I'm fairly comfortable at about 7 knots. Target bearing 320. So I've got about 40 degrees, 30 degrees, 40 degrees of observation before I need to make the shot. I'm at 1,500 meters. I'm moving at flank. When I get to within 1,800 meters, I might slow that down a bit, but I'm happy to continue pressing the charge here. So let's take a look and see where we are. Let's make sure that we can zero out the scope. So we're at 0. Let's just make sure you can kind of hear the TDC buzzing around in the background. And this might look like it's going crazy, but look what it's doing. It's just bringing around the TDC to where the bearing is, and it's at 0, which is good. We've got our 90-degree angle on bow, fine. We've got our 7 knots. So that, as I said, the TDC is set up and ready to go as long as that ship speed is 7 knots. So let's pop up the scope, and oh man, it is. Is it foggy? Oh yeah, look at that. We got rain. So we know the ship is around 322, so it should be over here somewhere, and I can barely see it. In fact, I can't see it without the help of that triangle. Let's see if I zoomed in. Oh yeah, there it is. So that's at a 6 magnification. At a 1.5, it's yeah, it's still a fair distance away. So I'm going to stay on this. Yeah, I'm not necessarily on an intercept course here, so the ship is not going to be just static in my scope. It could have some movement. I didn't set up this attack with with a vector for an intercept in mind, so it's not surprising me that the ship is moving. But maybe while I've got it in 6 speed, if I can identify this type of ship, which this one is probably a bell because it's got this sort of a front to it and this little uplift in the back, and I don't see towers. So I think that's a bell. So why don't we, I'm going to E-lock it, even though I'm not going to really be using this for much, and just see if I can get a check on my speed here to see if I'm within the, yeah, so there's the bell. See, that's the bit on the stern that I was talking about. So we'll recognize it as a bell. And I do see it's British, so that's a positive. Do I stop? I mean, you can, I've shown you in these videos, they say, oh, well, it's, you've got a risk of error in speed. I haven't seen error in speed. I'm going to leave it at flank, and I'm going to go ahead and check the velocity. They say this is by design, and that if you don't reduce your speed to 0, there's a chance of error, and I would agree with that. My disagreement with that is it's not that there's a chance of error, it's that there's a 100% chance of error. It should be absolutely be wrong. It should never be right. But we'll use it. I still think it's around 7 knots. And stop, set. Oh, 5. So it is moving slow. That's kind of what we saw in our plot, right? It was unusual that I felt like I could intercept the thing at 7 knots, so I guess 5, or is that the error that's being introduced? By my speed for a change. I suspect that 5 knots is probably right, given the kind of strange observation I thought that I was seeing previously. If you remember, I was saying it seemed odd that I could intercept at the submerged speeds that I had, but if it's only doing 5 knots, that's probably right. So I don't need this interface anymore. I was just using it to check the speed real quick, and if you don't E-lock it, it's not gonna let you do it. You can make sure. Well, we've got time to assign our Zedric here, or Zeech, to warm up a torpedo or two for us. And it looks like it's kind of dark, so I'm going to take us to red
Night
light,
lights, sir.
and that might help us a little bit on our scope visibility. Yeah, it looks like it's brightening up a little bit, so that helps. And we maybe try to get, let's see, is he have, yeah, he's got a couple helpers with him. See if we maybe get 2 of these warmed up just in case, but you know, checking again, I'm at 0 on the wire, going back to the TDC. There's probably nothing here I need to change. You know, my 7, it said 5. We'll see. Said 5, but there's that risk that I'm running, that quote-unquote that chronometer is wrong because I was moving at flank, but from what I've seen, it's usually right. I think I'm going to keep using it until it proves me wrong. So who knows? Maybe this time, maybe this is the time. I'll fire toward and I'll favor the front half of the ship, and if it hits in the back, then I'll say, okay, well maybe it was a little bit of error introduced there. Looks like we got one. Let's do at least one more. And I've got, these are 2 steam torpedoes. I'll see if I can pick them up, jump to them out in the outer view and see if we can follow the steam trail. And where is our ship again? We were at 330. Let's go to 1.5. Alright, so now, there it is. It's taken up about 2/3 distance. I'm probably at about a distance of 800, so I'm in a good firing location. I don't need to adjust the distance. It's set at 1,000 meters, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to take a very close to 0 gyro shot. And the ship is moving because I'm not on an intercept course. So I'm going to fire when that ship gets maybe about right, say right there at 350. So I'm going to go ahead and
Flood tube 1.
flood tube 1.
Tube 1 flooded.
And if I wanted to, if I know, for instance, that that's a 90 degree, and I move this, say, 20 degrees this way, I could reset the TDC for a 70 degree. Good grief! What is that buzzing? I could reset the TDC right now for 70 degree angle on bow, and take the shot a little bit early, and maybe that gives me time to get off another shot in case I was wrong, which probably wouldn't be a bad idea. But I'm going to leave it at the 90, and we'll take the shot here. Technically, 90 is not perfect because that should be about an 80 degree, but anyway, anywhere from here to here, that level of deviation on your angle and bow isn't going to make that big of a difference. And the ship's creeping up, and it's close. 15. I mean, I could probably take the shot now if I wanted to, but I'm going to aim on that tower there, and then that way, if my speed at 5 knots was way under, maybe it'll be a little bit forgiving. So we'll put it on 350. We'll fire when that tower crosses the wire, and we'll jump out and see if we can pick up the steam trail and see how close we were. In the meantime, I'm still moving at flank, so I could probably settle that down to
Dead
slow.
ahead.
And there's our target.
Fire.
And we'll jump out. And you can see our ship was there, and our torpedo went on a fairly straight path, so that's a 0 gyro shot. I'm not using, and this is what you see most of the people on YouTube, the type of shots they're taking are these fast 90 shots. And I don't know, what do you think? Do you think 5 knots was too slow of an estimate? See if it hits in the back quarter. Because it should have been impacting probably around that tower. Yeah, I was probably a knot off. It was probably 6 knots. But this is, that's why in the commander handbook they lay out this, this attack proper. They're wanting to put you in a position that you almost can't miss, and you certainly can use this, this methodology, for yourself. And I should have been more skeptical of that slow speed, because these things are always cruising along at 6 or 7 knots. But anyway, I was definitely close enough that it didn't make that big of a difference. But you get the idea how you can. I basically completely bypassed this E-lock and was working directly from the TDC. Now, some interesting info for our Silent Hunter 3 fans, if you all played the Silent Hunter series. The TDC in the Silent Hunter game, it lets you adjust like this, but as you pan the scope back and forth, you start on 0, you set up your fast 90 attack, and as you panned right and left, what the TDC was doing was it was automatically updating the angle on bow for you. So if I had set my attack at fast 90 with a 0 bearing and locked that into the TDC in the old Silent Hunter game, if I scrolled or panned to the right to say all the way out to 60, what I would see in the TDC is you'd see an angle on bow there of 30, so it had a tracking element. When you're using the early model TDC, you don't have that ability. When you upgrade to a 7 model, the 7B, 7C, you get an updated TDC, which is magnificent, and it's the S3. And it has that angle on bow tracking capability, so that as I'm, I can do what I just did, set it up for 0, and then as I pan back and forth, that TDC just sits there and spins and recalculates the angle on bow, and it's beautiful because I could have set up on that approach, and when I said, oh hey look, it's at 70 or 60 angle on bow and I want to take that shot, I could have done it without having to go in and readjust the TDC, so that makes it really great. The one other thing that the S3 does in this game, which I believe is told is historically accurate, is not only does it update for angle on bow, but unlike what we had in Silent Hunter 3, it also updates for the position of your sub. So not only could you be panning your scope, but you could also be turning left and right, and the TDC, the more advanced TDC, will sit there and update angle on bow for both changes in your sub position as well as where you're panning the scope, and it's just amazing and fun to use. Now, what's interesting is we kind of have the best of all 3 worlds, because in Silent Hunter, that ability is basically what we have baked into this interface that we use up here. Because if I'm using the older model C37 and I do what I just did, if I would have entered in my angle on bow and entered it in down here in the E-lock, it would have shown 90, and then as I pan the scope, it would have been doing the update to the angle on bow down here, but not on the TDC. And then all I have to do is, I could have scanned to the left or right, click the update, and fired the torpedo. But anyway, I did want to, a quick shout out to all my old Silent Hunter friends, and never fear, everything that you used to do in Silent Hunter series, you can definitely do in this game. And the tools, the TDC, the early model, late model, and this attack scope interface, you've got such an arsenal here that as well as the abilities that your crew endows you with related to this, the success is really heavily skewed in your favor. So in no time at all, if you get practice a little bit with what I'm showing you here, and maybe watch a few more of the examples that I give you, I've got another interesting case that I think I might show next. But anyway, that's the concept behind. And the other thing about zero gyro, it doesn't matter if you're on a perpendicular or not. Zero gyro is zero gyro, and I'll probably get into that maybe a little bit more in the next video. But thanks for watching.